Hi, everyone. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to the second of 9 Tadaima Fine Art Friday Artist Talks. I'm sorry I wasn't able to host last week's Artist Talk. Unfortunately, I had internet issues, which thankfully have been fixed. A big thank you to Hanako Wakatsuki for stepping in at the last moment and hosting. I'm John Tonai, curator of the Fine Art Fridays. I'm here inside the Mukai family apartment in the barracks that were moved from Heart Mountain concentration camp to the Japanese American National Museum in 1994. Later on in the pilgrimage, we will be featuring Sharon Yamato's film, Moving Walls, which documented the moving of this building to Los Angeles. Joining in the presentation will be Stan Honda, whose photographs are featured in the film. So check the pilgrimage schedule for the date and time. The artists featured in Tadaima work in a variety of media, from photography, mixed media, paint, sculpture, ceramics, and video. I also wanted to get Canadian-Japanese artists to help tell the story that isn't that well known in the United States. Each artist uses their art to investigate and interpret their impressions of the personal, historic, socioeconomic, psychological, aesthetic, and/or cultural aspects of the camps. The artists and the work can be found on the Tadaima Fine Art Gallery site. It's my extreme honor to introduce you to today's featured artist, Paul Kitagaki Jr. I met Paul in the panel discussion of his show, Gambatte, Legacy of an Enduring Spirit at JANA. He and I spent some time after the discussion with him telling me stories about his work and the people he photographed. I could not anticipate the strong emotional pull his work had on me as I looked at the historical photographs of the incarcerees as they were in the middle of having their lives torn apart and compared them to his photographs much later on in their lives when they could look back on their experiences as survivors of the camps. San Francisco Bay Area native Paul Kitagaki Jr. has traveled the world covering natural and human-caused disasters, documenting the lives of everyday Iraqi living under Saddam Hussein, Mexico City residents digging out of a deadly earthquake, Asian factory workers laboring for pennies to produce high-end athletic shoes for U.S. and international athletes competing for gold at 9 different Olympic Games. Kitagaki's work has been honored with dozens of photo awards, including the Pulitzer Prize, and has been nominated for Emmys. He's been published in news outlets worldwide, including National Geographic, Time, the Smithsonian Magazine, Sports Illustrated, Stern, People, Mother Jones, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, and the Washington Post, as well as his home newspaper, the Sacramento Bee. Gambatte, Legacy of an Enduring Spirit, documents and illuminates a dark episode in our country's history, the relocation and internment of more than 120,000 ethnic Japanese Americans. Kitagaki has spent the last 15 years locating the families who lived through the internment camps, documented their stories of survival and inner strength to overcome injustice, racism, and wartime hysteria. His book, based on the photographs from Gambatte, Behind Barbed Wire, Searching for Japanese Americans Incarcerated During World War II, won an Independent Book Publishers Peacemaker Award Gold Medal and an International Photography Award in the category of Professional Documentary Book. In 2014, he was featured in the PBS film American Masters, Dorothea Lange, Grab a Hunk of Lightning, on the life and times of the woman whose work sparked his own journey, as well as the 2019 Abby Ginsburg documentary, And They Came for Us. He is also one of 3 photographers featured on KCT's Lost LA, 3 Views of Manzanar, which will be re-airing on July 1st, 2nd, 4th, 21st, and 22nd, and is also streaming on the PBS app. So to the community of Tadaima, I give you Paul Kitagaki Jr.
Hey, John. Thank you, John, and the Tadaima community for letting me share the story. So
I'm glad to have you.
Thank you for that great introduction, too. I think we could start with the first slide. Oops. And we can actually go to the next one. So I want to take you guys all on this journey, and this journey that I took to. And I want to reveal the mystery behind some of the historical photographs of the American incarceration of Japanese Americans after, Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066 in 1942. That's almost 78 years ago. Next. Will you play this? Oh, no sound. Sorry, we're missing the sound on this.
So Paul, can you just maybe just, if
Yeah.
you can't get the audio, just describe what's happening?
This is some photos that Dorothea Lange showed of my family that I uncovered later. And so Dorothea Lange shot a lot of the more iconic images of the incarceration, working for the War Relocation Authority. And hold on. So over 50 years ago, in 1970, I started on this journey. Oh, go back one. Sorry. It's okay. And I started on this journey, and I learned this really tragic and amazing story that my parents had never spoken about at home. Next. So in my history class, my American history class in high school, I discovered that my parents and my grandparents were locked behind barbed wire, taken away from their homes during World War II, just because of their race. And they lived in these poorly built temporary shacks, buildings, like on this one in the Tanforan racetrack in San Bruno. And they shared these places with 120,000 other Japanese Americans who were uprooted from their homes during World War II. And you got to remember, like 2/3 of them were American citizens. And as I grew up, we would drive past this place, the Tanforan racetrack, now a shopping center in San Bruno. And that held over 7,800 Bay Area Japanese Americans, including my dad's family. And still not one word was spoken when we drove by the location. Next, please. So maybe it's that Japanese concept of shikacha ganai, can't be helped. I might have overheard my parents talk to other Japanese Americans, whether at the grocery store or somewhere else, say, hey, what camp are you in? And for me, and that was like a common bond for their generation. But those harsh conditions never crossed my mind. And I was like an Eagle Boy Scout, and camping was supposed to be fun. Next, please. So after learning about that in 1970 in this class, I was really hungry for more information. I found one book, American Concentration Camp, but I found this book that was published in 1972 called Executive Order 9066. And it was the first time I'd seen images, really compelling images of the incarceration. Next. And this is May Yanagi. And you could see she's wearing a tag, and the motion off her face, and it just blew me away. Next. So many of these photos were taken by Dorothea Lange, and this is Andy Nozaka, and that's him. He just arrived at the Tanforan Assembly Center, and has his mess kit over his shoulder. But it was so crazy because his dad was arrested right away by the FBI, taken away. So his mom there had to bring the 4 kids, close the house down, and then they joined his dad later on at the Crystal City. And another sad thing is that his mom had died when they were in Crystal City. Next. So many of these photographs that Dorothea Lange showed the humanity and the suffering of people who just look just like me. And this is the Marchita family from Hayward, and their dad owned a nursery. And Dorothea Lange had this ability to capture the moment where everything changed in everybody's life. It made you really want to care about those people in the photographs. Next. And this is Mamoru Takeuchi, and he's wearing his tag there. And his dad was arrested right away, and they had to go to camp together. And then his mom also passed away when they were in camp. But these images just spoke out to me, and they became the iconic images of the Japanese American experience during World War II. Next, please. This is George Hirano. That's the day he was drafted into the Army, and that's when a photo of him and his parents posting. But these photographs left this burning desire in me. I wanted to know more. More. I wanted to learn and discover more about everybody's life who were in these photographs. And I wanted to really learn what my folks didn't speak about. So maybe learning from all these other subjects in these photographs, I could learn more about the experience. Next. So in 1984, I went to the National Archives in Washington, D.C., and looked through over 900 of Dorothea Lange's images there, and that she shot for the War Relocation Authority. Next, please. So my Uncle Novo, who was an artist in San Francisco, had told me, he gave me he encouraged my passion as a photographer, and he really gave me this gift. He told me that Dorothea Lange had photographed her family, and I really wanted to know what those photographs looked like. So when I went there in 1984, I looked through these boxes of photographs, and they roll out this card, and here they were. And I didn't know what these photographs were going to look like. Next, please. So I found this one photograph in one of the last boxes, and it was dated May 5th, 1942. And I'm looking at this photograph. There's my dad on the right, my grandparents, and my aunt. And I'm wondering, why is my grandmother smiling during this really sad time? And years later, my dad told me that was her family friend, Dorothea Hightower. And she had come, just wished my family goodbye. And her family had also stored a lot of their personal belongings when they left. And so did the Oakland Buddhist Temple. And it was really amazing. And my grandfather had a dry cleaning business on Piedmont Avenue that he had to sell, and basically the family lived in the back, and he was never able to reestablish the business when they came back to Oakland. Next, please. I found these other four photographs. A total of four photographs that Dorothea Lange took. The one in the upper right is the Tan Fran Assembly Center, and in that photograph is my Uncle Nub in the background. He helped establish the Tan Fran library there. And he also worked on this newsletter they called the Tan Fran Totalizer. And then when they went to Topaz, he worked on this publication called the Trek magazine. And in the bottom two are the pictures of my aunt waiting with the family luggage. And the first time I saw that picture of my aunt was in this exhibit at the National Archives back in the 90s. Next, please. So this is a photograph of my dad and my aunt taken outside of the same location in Oakland just before my aunt was to move back to Atlanta to live with her daughter, because my aunt was suffering from dementia at that point. My mom's family had a different, so my dad's family went to Tan Fran, and then they ended up in Topaz. My dad and my aunt also left camp. My dad left and went to Des Moines, Iowa to finish his last year of high school. My mom's family wasn't so lucky. They were farmers in San Jose, California, truck farmers, very poor. And my grandfather had suffered a stroke before the war, so he's bedridden. But when the war started, they had to go to the Santa Anita racetrack. And so they went there. They took my grandfather with them because they didn't want to leave him in a county hospital. And they stayed in a horse stall there at Santa Anita. And then they went to Poston. And then after the war, my mom's family, they never came back to San Jose. They ended up being in Albuquerque and farming in Albuquerque. So next, please. So I photographed my whole project with a 4x5 camera. I wanted my pictures to kind of match the photographs that Dorothea Lange had taken in all the other War Relocation Authority photographers who have this huge body of work documenting the incarceration. So I wanted my photographs to look similar to their photographs. So I used a 4x5 camera, and I shot black and white film. Next, please. And many of the subjects I photographed had said to me, we hope like this never happen again in America. So I think they really wanted to help share their stories of what happened to them. Next. So I started with the Lange photographs. And this is one from San Francisco. I'm still looking for those two kids. This is at WWII School in San Francisco, 1942. But over these 15 years, it's taken me so long to find these photographs, the identity of the people in the photographs. Next, please. So on the back of many of the photographs in the National Archives is what you see here. It might say the place and the date where the photograph was taken, but a lot of times there's no information on who were in the photographs, the names of the kids or the parents. And it made it very challenging to find everybody. So with a lot of luck and determination and help from a lot of people, I was able to start identifying the people. Next, please. So like when I called a potential subject, a lot of times I had to overcome that. First, I had to overcome the thing they thought I was a salesman selling something, so I didn't want them to hang up on me. But I wanted them to overcome. They had to overcome that Japanese concept of enjo, where you're reserved, you don't restrain, you don't hold back, you don't want to get a nail sticking up. So many were very reluctant to talk to me, and much less have me photograph them. But so it took a lot of time to gain their trust, kind of explain what I was doing, trying to explain that I wanted to share their history, because nobody else knows their story but them, and their images are iconic images of what happened to the Japanese Americans during World War II. So I really wanted to share their story so they could tell the story for everybody else. Next, please. So for many, this was the first time they'd share their story outside of their family. And a lot of times the subjects who I interviewed, their children wanted to know what their parents had spoken about, because the parents, like my parents, didn't share their stories at home. So they really wanted to know what was said, and they wanted to know a little bit more about their personal history. This is really a famous another famous Lange photograph. Their uncle had taken over the store after the family had left, and he was a UC Berkeley student. He put that sign up. And this is the siblings. There was 3 siblings, and these are the cousins, and that's the same location in Oakland today. It's now a bank. Next, please. So many of the people I met, some were school teachers like my dad and my uncle. They taught school in San Francisco. Others were farmers like my mom's family. But I also met doctors, scientists, engineers, lawyers, housewives, businessmen, social workers, musicians, artists, resistors, volunteers, yes people, no people. I met so many different people. Next, please. So I think there's okay, that's okay. So it took 3 years to find all 3 gentlemen here. I got the name of one of the people. And then I found another guy a year later. And then I found the third guy 3 years later. So when I went to photograph all 3 gentlemen, I picked each guy up and brought him to one of the other guys' house in Monterey Park. And 2 of the guys, which is so crazy, live within a mile of each other. And when I was researching these guys for years, I said, hey, do you know the other guy? And no. But then when oh yeah, they kind of knew each other, but it's like, so it was kind of like this crazy journey, 3 years just to find all 3 of them. And which was really interesting. All 3 guys, their fathers were all arrested by the FBI shortly after the war started, all for different reasons. One of them, their father was a businessman, so he traveled a lot. One had a tofu store in Tokyo, but he was in the business association. And every day these guys this is the historical photo is from Heart Mountain, and every day these guys would raise and lower the American flag, and Mr. Kato in the back would play his bugle. Next, please. Can you play this? This is Lillian Matsumoto. She was 101 when she passed away. She helped start the Children's Village with her husband in Manzanar. And I think there's an audio clip with this. And it's not playing. The sound's not playing. The sound's not playing on this. Try that one more time, please. Sorry, John, we still can't hear it.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wing it.
Okay, let's try the next one. Maybe the next one will play.
In the early part of 1940, we started asking questions of the government, how are you going to move 50 children? Where are we going to go? Because if all the Japanese community was gone, just Japanese children living here and there, they may not even be able to go to school. Ride to Manzanar, it's about 4 hours from LA. And she was only 4 years old. And she sang, "God Bless America." This soldier that was sitting guarding us, I could see tears running down he was really overcome by this little girl singing that song, "God Bless America."
And the next one is, this is, excuse me, Kiyoshi Katsumoto. He's there on the left. This is in Centerville in Fremont. And after the war, he came back and was farming, but he ended up getting an engineering degree and worked in, I think, at Chevron Oil for most of his career. And we can play the audio clip for this, please.
We had our constitutional rights taken away from us, and I just felt really bad that our own government would do something like that to us. The family number we were given was 21365, and that's what we were reduced to, was a number. Any name you want to give it, it was still a concentration camp. I mean, we were prisoners. We did not have freedom to go and walk wherever we wanted to. We were confined within the borders of the barbed wire and guard towers.
So this is one of my favorite Dorothea Lange images. The symbolism of the girls pledging allegiance to the flag. This is in San Francisco, Ralph Weil School. It's just amazing. Next, please. And 65 years later, I was able to photograph both the women together. That's Helene Miyahara on the left and Mary Ann Yahiro on the right. And Mary Ann lived in Chicago at the time, and Helene lived down in Los Angeles. I was able to get them together, and they're standing at the front gate of the school. And that's the first time they'd seen each other since 1942. And it's a really amazing story. How everybody's connected somehow. But I'd learned that Helena's father, they owned the grocery store that my mom would shop at in San Francisco called American Fish Market. And we go there all the time. And then I also learned later on is that both their parents were arrested by the FBI. Helena's dad was arrested right away because he's a businessman and he donated money to some organization. And Mary Ann, her mom taught Japanese language, and the FBI arrested her right away. And what's so crazy was her mom died in one of the federal detention centers, and she never saw her mom again until they brought her body back to Topaz for the funeral service. was just so crazy. And Marianne said, you know, it was so crazy. She said, you know, even though that thing happened, she didn't have any bitterness. Next, please. This is Mitch Kojimoto, and that's him in San Francisco on Venice Avenue. And he was, I think, 18 or 19 at the time. But he was, later, he would join the Japanese American 442nd Combat Regiment. And he would also win a Bronze Star for bravery in France and Italy. And can we play the clip, please?
I didn't know where Pearl Harbor was, and my mother and I were really shocked that such a thing could happen. The big day of our young lives were we were being kicked out of San Francisco. It was kind of shocking because as you grow up, you think you have certain rights of life, liberty. We were citizens, but now we were not. Being treated so harshly was very heartbreaking.
And I was lucky enough to photograph Mitz in this exact same place in San Francisco, which is now today a Jiffy Lube on Venice Avenue. This photograph, this is Walter Sockaway, and that's his grandfather. It took me years and years to photograph this or find the identity of Walter. And it wasn't until a few years ago that somebody at the Manzanar site, one of the rangers, said she thinks she knows who that person is. And so she gave me a name, and it was spelled very different, Sakawye. I'm thinking, that doesn't look like a Japanese correct spelling, but amazingly, I Googled the name, and he popped up, and it was like amazing, because usually you get a name, and you can't get the contact information, right? So it was really amazing, and I called Walter up. He was living in Texas. He lives in Texas now outside of Dallas, and I said, hey, I learned about you. I'd really like to come out and photograph you and talk to you about your family. So amazingly that a year after this photograph was taken, Walter's dad had died in Manzanar. And then later on, his dad and his brother, his younger brother, were also to die during the war. And so it was just he and his mom, and they lived in Denver for a while. Then they came back to Venice Beach, or Venice, California, where they had a house and a little land there. So can we play the clip, please?
And he was a trucker in Venice, California, hauling all the produce from the fields there to the market downtown. The property they didn't lose, but when they came back, everything was gone. I don't know. As an individual now, if they tried to pull it off now, I don't think I would cooperate. If you talk to people nowadays, especially the younger people, they don't know what you're talking about. What internment camp? What's that? I think it's important for them to know that this thing did happen, and certainly hope that it never happens again to anyone.
And this is Harvey Atano, and this was taken in Sacramento. And it's really incredible. He was the co-discoverer of the genetic cause of sickle cell anemia in 1946 when he worked with Linus Pauling in Caltech. Next, please. So I kept on calling him, telling I'd like to photograph him and interview him. And finally, I worked my way into his front door. Lived down in San Diego and got to see him. And it was really incredible because he knew so much about all these other people from this. There's a bunch of Sacramento photographs. And he could identify all these people in there and tell me all their stories. But when it came to time and talk about himself, he was so humble that he wouldn't talk about himself and all the achievements he did in science. After working at Caltech, he went to work for the federal government in Washington, D.C., and then he finished up his career at UC San Diego doing research work. But it was just, and then when I was photographing, technical thing was, I'd have him sit very still because a lot of the exposures I was shooting were like 1 second exposures. Next, please. This is Yuki Llewellyn. This was taken by Clem Alvarez. This is at the Union train station in Los Angeles. And I met Yuki when she was doing kind of like a roots thing. She was kind of like finding out about her past. And we met at the Japanese American National Museum. She did some research there. And then we also drove out to Manzanar. And the first time she'd been there since 1945 when she left to go to Cleveland, Ohio. And she just recently passed away a few months ago at age 81. And which was so cool about her, she was an associate dean for the Asian Studies program. She helped start at the Champaign, Illinois college in Illinois. Can we play the clip?
I was born on Cracker Street in Little Tokyo. Went to camp, and from camp went to Cleveland, Ohio. I remember that my mom said that my dad had died in the war. And I didn't know what that meant, if he was in the war or during the war, you know, why she said that. When I went to camp, it was just my mother and me. But when I went back to Manzanar to check on my records and things, I found out that she indeed had the Okinaga last name. She had the Hayakawa last name, and she had entered Manzanar with a man and me, but it wasn't my father. My father was in Manzanar, but I didn't know that until I was an adult. I wanted some kind of memory to come flooding back to me just by being there, and it didn't come. I still have it in my room, as a matter of fact, sand from the area they said this is where your block was. But I didn't get any feeling of memory. I'm not ever sure that certain things will never happen again, just because they were horrific, just because they were terrible, because they impacted badly on our people. She thought that it ruined her life, that she came to the United States for a better life. She never got it, and blamed the war and camp. Everything that has happened to me in my life has been influenced in some way because of my experience at camp.
Yeah, Yuki's mom was a Kibe. So she was born in the States, and then she came back when she married her husband. This is Mason Tachibana. This is an Ansel Adams photograph at the Catholic Church in Manzanar. And Mason's there on the very bottom right, looking back toward us. And the crazy thing about Mason, he lives in Los Angeles. I had to photograph him 3 times. The first time I photographed him, my emulsion fell off my film. I called them up and said, "Hey, I'm not going to believe this, but my film's all destroyed. Can I rephotograph you?" And I'm at his son's house in Berkeley. So I rephotographed him again. And I'm looking at my film after that, and I'm like, something's wrong. Everything's out of focus. Is it my eyes or is it the camera? So I said, "Mason, I got to photograph you one more time." And he said, "Okay." And he's so incredible because he became a social worker later in life. And I think that was part of the reason from his camp experience, he wanted to help other people. So can we play the clip, please?
I turned 7 when we went into camp January. We went in February. So I was 6 at that time. It's my sister in the back, Sister Susanna, Sister Bernadette, the gruff one. Mother and father never went to church, but they were Buddhists. They sent us to Marino because they taught Japanese language over there. And my father and mother never learned how to speak English. We went to Marino. I remember school was kind of happy there. You know, there was some joy there. I remember coming home from the bus, it was kind of lighthearted, but it was maybe the last time I sensed any kind of I didn't know that this was going to get me. But I never thought of that like this. So then it was into camp after that, and just any kind of joy or good times it just stopped, I think. I didn't think of this before. That time and the time just went, it just changed. So in that way, Merino Catholic Church, they were very important to us.
Okay. So I started this project in 2005, and it took me over 7 years to find 12 subjects because there's no names on the background. I had to go to different churches and say, hey, do you recognize this in these photographs? Somebody had to recognize somebody. Then I had to find a phone number or an address or some kind of way to contact them. And then also call them up and get them to participate with my crazy idea. And so in 2012, it was the 7th anniversary of the signing of Executive Order 9066. So we had Bay Area BART, this is the San Bruno BART station, on the side of the Tampran racetrack, which was the Tampran Assembly Center. They had an Asian Pacific Islander History Month. So I had in the Sacramento Bee and in the San Francisco Chronicle. And this guy, Richard Oba, said, hey, would you like to participate in this historical month? I said, sure. So we hung 12 of my photographs. We also hung a bunch of historical pictures from the Tampran area. And then they borrowed some historical panels from the Japanese American Historical Society in San Francisco. And we had this 1 month exhibit. Well, incredibly, this 1 month exhibit is still there. It's become a permanent exhibit. BART has signed off on it, and it's been just really amazing. And since then, this Tampran Assembly Center has sponsored a JAX grant for me to create an exhibit. And they also created, apply for another grant. And at the same site, they're going to put a memorial plaza there to honor, because what's there at Tampran has a small little square plaque on the parking lot. So now there's a statue or a bronze statue commission of the Mochita girl. And there's going to be this huge plaza because of a change of ownership for the mall. It's really incredible what's going on. Next, please. So I've really been really amazed at how when people come to see the exhibit, how much they are also interested, like I am, in who's in the photographs and what's the story behind the historical picture in the contemporary picture I've shot them. What's happening in that person's life, and so they'll stand there and read this 500-word text block of the before and after of that family and their story. And a lot of times they'll come back. I've heard they'll come back multiple times with the exhibit because they can't take it all in at once. Today we have over 60 of the images. It really grew from 2012. I got 48 more images. People I found, people said, hey, I know who's in these photographs. And I've gotten more contacts, and it was really incredible for all the help I got. Next, please. So this is really an American story. Ethnic Japanese Americans were rounded up by Americans, forced to find an American prison camp by armed Americans. And after World War II, they returned to their American communities. And then, as we all know, in 1988, America finally formally apologized with an apology, which is so important for many of the subjects I've asked. It was more important than getting the reparations. More important for them to have that apology. It meant so much more to them. And this is an exhibit at the International Center of Photography in New York City. They did a projection. This is a few years back. Next, please. So as I said, there's over 600 images shown. This is from the Japanese American National Museum. It's been the most incredible and best show ever. It's spread over 3 rooms, and they did a beautiful, incredible job displaying and sharing the work with everybody. And this ran from 2018 to 2019. Please. Oops. So as I continue adding to the body work, I found 5 more people last year. And I still keep on searching and finding people. And you got to remember, most of the subjects today are in their 80s and 90s. I've had about 17 of the people I've photographed already have passed away since I started the project. Next, please. So I was really lucky we were able to publish this book in September behind WWII, and basically it's all the same stories in the photographs that are in the exhibit. And I really wanted something that was you could hold in your hand, because a lot of times things that go up on the web, they're there for a short period of time, or they're hard for a lot of older people to access. So I was hoping to publish this book, and I was able to get the funding for this. And we published 1,600 of them, and the first run is, my publishers told me it's sold out. And we were really lucky to get a couple of awards for the book. I really want to get this like in different educational places like libraries and stuff. So hopefully we could get enough money to get a second printing so we could get this out in more places. And I really wanted to, for me, it was so important to keep the story of the Japanese American incarceration alive and really know those faces behind those images, because I think once you know the personal stories, you could have like a better personal connection to the subject in the pictures, and so you're not just flipping by them. You actually know who they are, and maybe there's some kind of connection you might have with them, and maybe you could remember something you could remember, and hopefully, like so many have said, this will never happen again, and history will never repeat itself again. Next slide, please. So the 15 years I've spent on this project has been a journey filled with sometimes beautiful, but often some painful recollections. And really, without the generosity of all my subjects sharing their stories, and other people helped me identify and track down those people in the photograph, we wouldn't have the story of what I have in this project here. And lastly, I really want to thank all the Issei, Nisei, Sansei for overcoming all their those hardships they had to face in their lives. Without their struggles, my generation Sansei, and then my daughters and their kids, my grandkids, would never have the opportunities they have today in life. Thank you. And the next slide. So in looking for a Japanese word to capture the strength of those who survived that experience, I found in this word Gambatte, which means to triumph over adversity, never giving up, always trying to do one's best. And it has come to find out not only their spirit in this work, but also my life. And these are a few of their stories, so that we will always remember, always. And thank you.
Well, thank you, Paul. We are opening up to, if you have any questions to ask of Paul. I've got a couple things, and it struck me when I saw the show, your book hadn't come out yet. It came out, a month later, I think it was.
Yeah,
but why?
September.
Why the title change? I mean, because Gambatte was such a strong feeling. It really described the attitude and the perseverance of the people. And then the book was Behind Barbed Wire, a totally different take or a different feeling. So what happened? What was the reason for it?
Well, my publisher thought that Gambatte nobody would really know what that would mean outside the Japanese community. And he thought Behind Barbed Wire would attract a wider audience, because we are trying to share this story, not with the Japanese community, but with really a wide and a diverse audience, right? So his thought process was behind it was, well, this is why we should change the title of it.
Okay. So what has been the reaction to your work, both inside and outside the Nikkei community? What are some of the attitudes of the people or responses of the people you've come across?
I think people are really, like I was mentioning, some of those images are so iconic that Dorothea Lange shot, and all the images we've seen over the years that are in museums and different exhibits, right? We see the images on the walls, but we don't know who the people are in the photographs, right? A lot of those images. And I think people have really liked that now we know who those people are and what happened to their family. And is their story similar to my family or somebody else's family? Or, because we had people who were rich, people who were poor. I mean, all different genres of economic and social, in the Japanese community, right? And everybody got affected differently. And so there's so many different stories, and I think people are really interested in everybody's story, in the common part of it, and then the different part of everybody else's story, and how they overcame what happened to everybody.
Okay. I know this is almost like picking your favorite child, but was there a person or persons that really were your most memorable subjects, whether it's their story or just some impact they had on you during your photography sessions? Well,
it was really crazy. The day I photographed, I showed you the picture of the two girls doing the Pledge of Allegiance, Helene Ihara and Marianne Ihara. Later that day, because my mom was having surgery, heart surgery again, and later that day, I went to see my mom, who was like a few blocks away at the Kaiser in San Francisco, after she had her surgery, and then she passed away right then. It was just a crazy day. And the other thing was we shared with you Mason Tachibana, and I told you I had to photograph him 3 times. He was so patient with me, but I mean, he was incredible, because when we went to interview him, we're talking, and then he really, I mean, these feelings just, we remembered these things that he had long forgotten and he buried. He just kept down, and they just came out, and it was incredible. And then I just talked, his career path, like they had to come back to Burbank, live in the trailers. It was really hard for them. And then, they were on welfare and all this other stuff that was kind of really hard for his father, the shame of it and all the struggles they had to go through. And he remembers the social worker coming to help them. And I said to him, during our conversation, I go, because I asked him what he became, right? And he goes, well, I became a social worker, and I helped. And I go, do you think that experience shaped your path, your life path? And he goes, I never really thought of it, but he goes, maybe that could have been part of the reason why I went there, because he's helping other people. And it was really incredible. And I met Fumiko Hayashida. I'm not sure if we could play the photographs of my project in the background on the side of us, but can we do that on a loop or something? I'm not sure, but Fumiko, she's the picture from Seattle, Bainbridge Island, carrying the daughter, her daughter, and she was the first family that left Seattle. So when I went to photograph her, I met her. I lived in Seattle. The whole time I was there, I didn't know where she was, and I moved to Sacramento, and then I found her. So we just play this on a loop. I think they'll just play. But when I went to see her, I went up to this house. There was she lived up this hill. Her house was on top of this hill. There was these stairways, and the stairways cut out of dirt with these cement things in the thing. So I walk up there, go in her house. She's got their whole living room covered with these green frogs. Somehow she somebody gave her one frog and it's turned this collection of frogs. But then when I went to go photograph her, I wanted to take her out to the Bainbridge Islands, so which meant we left her house in Seattle, took a ferry across to the Bainbridge Island. So as we're walking out of her house, she's walking down these crazy stairs. I'm thinking, I'm going to kill her. She's going to break her neck. Her pain. I'm trying to help her down the stairs. I'm like, oh, let's better be safe. So we went out there, and then we had another conversation. Then she said her family was coming out for an event. So, and then we found two other photographs related to her family. There's one of the, this is Fumiko right here. And we photographed her back on her farm that her family didn't leave. And she was a sansa. And it was really interesting. Her three sisters had been, her husbands, they were all arrested because they had contraband. They were strawberry farmers on Bainbridge. So they had guns and dynamite to blow up tree stumps because they're clearing the land. So when they left Seattle and they arrived in Manzanar, she said, on April Fool's Day, and she just couldn't believe that they were there from this, and all three of them were there. And her daughter, which is in a photograph, she later on, she's a little more politically active. She lived down in Houston. She became like a mayor of the town they were living in. This is another one. That's some of her cousins. It's in Seattle. Yeah, so it's like Andrew here, he told me that he had buried these things in his backyard, and when he came back, he unburied them and found them. This gentleman here, that's his mom. He's outside, but he's holding his baseball glove that he took to camp with him. He loved baseball. He wanted to be a doctor, but he never became a doctor. He came back after camp and was a gardener like so many other Japanese Americans to make a living.
Okay, Paul, we're getting close to the end. We have a couple questions. Yeah. And so, so here's the first one from Erin Shigaki. Erin's really good artist herself. So Paul, I'm such a fan. Thank you for your work. I'm curious about your emotional reaction to seeing images of your family in the Lange archives for the first time. Actually, that was a question I have too.
It's really incredible because when you go to that Lange, to the National Archives, you saw those little shoe boxes. I call them shoe boxes. They're archival boxes. And all the prints are in little cellophane, 4x5 cellophane, and on the back's the caption, right? And so they bring these boxes out, and I didn't have much time. This is in 1984, and in another little part of the backstory, I was working for the San Francisco Examiner. I was on the campaign trail with, I don't know if you remember, Gary Hart, who's running for president. So I was traveling with him, and the trip ended up in DC. So I said, and I didn't have much money at the time because I didn't have much money. I had a little family. So I go, I'm here. I'm going to go to the archives and look for this photograph. I had no idea what it looked like. So I'm just flipping through these boxes. And really, as I was flipping through those boxes, all those faces staring up at me, it really got to me. It's like, I really want to know everybody else's story too. As I was flipping and flipping, I was getting near the time I had to leave to go to the airport, and I found that picture of my grandparents and my dad, and I was like, it was so incredible. So at the time, now you could get a digital thing, but back in the day, you had to order a negative. So I ordered a big 4x5 negative and an 8x10 negative of the image. And I didn't know about the other two images of my aunt, so I hadn't found those yet, or the other one I found of my uncle later on at the library. So yeah, it's really an incredible experience just to flip through those. And I've tried to tell so many other people too, that now these images are online, but it's hard for like an older person to get online to look at them because they're thumbnails and it's kind of cumbersome, clumsy to look through them. So I'm still trying to find more people. So hey, look here, and maybe you could find something that could help identify. But it's really incredible when you see your family there. And a lot of times, some of these people I photographed, they never knew their photographs were taken, and then they were in the archives.
Yeah, also, I know, and as far as the images on the web, they're not all the ones in the archives actually on the web yet either. So,
No, and a lot of
yeah.
times when I first started, the stuff that was on JARDA, at Berkeley, UC Berkeley, there were so many more images there you could see. Now they're curated and you can't see everything.
Mhm.
So it's really hard to find images.
Yes. Okay, and Kimiko, is there another? Okay, so is Sharon Machida related to the Machida family mentioned in your presentation?
No, it's Mochida, Mochida.
Okay. Okay. So Kimiko is, okay, go. So thanks for doing this. Like you, I recall looking at a family copy of EO 9066 as a child. Can you tell me who took the original photos? Albers, Lange, Adams, any others?
Yeah. So when you go to the National Archives, on the back of the photograph is the name of the photographer. And I'm not sure you guys know the other famous, for me, he's famous and I met him, Carl Iwasaki. He's a Japanese-American photographer. He worked for the War Relocation Authority. And then after the war, he worked for Life magazine and for Time and for Sports Illustrated. He lived in Denver. And he had a book come out a few years back of all the images he took for during camp life and after relocation. But on all the historical pictures in the National Archives are the names of the photographers. Now, the Ansel Adams photographs, those are in the Library of Congress. He donated his pictures there. So that's where you see the Ansel Adams pictures, and you could actually Google it on Library of Congress Ansel Adams, so you can see the images that he took.
Okay, so is that it, Kimiko? So we have Gordon Sakue. Is there any way to support putting books in libraries when the next printing happens?
I'm up for any kind of idea. We're grassroots. I'm just a body of one. I'm just a staff of one.
So Gordon, you want to help him? It's funny because I did notice in one of the comments, Grant Din, who's really married to my cousin, mentioned that he'd seen your photographs in the San Bruno station. I remember going through there several times and seeing the work too. But the one thing that struck me was the photograph of Yuki. So that was the one you donated for our gala.
Right.
I bid on that. I lost. I was so disappointed. It was such a powerful photograph. But
she's
anyhow,
an incredible person. It was like, for me, she's my first subject. I don't know if I mentioned it. She was my first subject outside the family. And it was just so incredible. We went to, like I said, the first photograph was taken at the Union Station in LA. So we went there first. I shot some pictures there and they're okay. I didn't get a good feeling because I was trying to match the same place where it's taken. But then when we went out to Manzanar, I don't know, it just happened out there. And she came out with her with a family friend who's who works at the LA County Museum, who's related to her. But it was like a really incredible journey for her, a discovery of her family. And I was so lucky that she shared it with me. And I actually, a few years back, I re-interviewed her because the first time I interviewed her, all I had was my little iPod with this really crummy mic on top. So I didn't have any gear. So we did the first interview inside her hotel room with this really crummy recorder. And then a few years back, I was in Missouri judging a contest at University of Missouri. So I called her up and met her and actually did some video with her and we asked some questions. But it was really good seeing her again too,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that she passed this year.
Yeah, I know. That's when I saw the announcement. I was like, oh, it was such a wonderful life and just an amazing story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our hour's up. Paul, I'd like to thank you once again for being willing to show your work with us and to be part of our community. And so for next week's Fine Art Friday, we have the Round Rock Collective, which are 3 cousins who have done a video piece. And so if you'd like to see it before they actually talk about it, go to the Tadaima Fine Art Gallery and see the work. So once again, thank you, Paul. It's been a pleasure. Oh, sure.
May I mention one last thing? And anybody who knows anywhere else in the United States, we're trying to get this, like in the South, the West, anywhere, just more eyes on the story so more people are familiar with it. And I think it would, so if anybody's got leads or support to get it in different parts of the country, that'd be so wonderful. So we could share the story everywhere to a wider audience.
Yes, definitely. The show is a traveling show, so I imagine they can get a hold of you at the website that's been scrolling underneath. Okay.
Thank you so much, John, for all your time and support. Really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.